This is how you can travel despite being busy and not having enough time. Working 9 to 5, being a full-time husband and father, and having a side hustle makes it much more difficult to find time for everything. That's why I had to come up with ways to be more efficient and still enjoy my time with traveling. And that's what I did. Today I'm gonna show you how to plan your itinerary easily and quickly without spending hours of your precious time. How to optimize your days off, as we all know how difficult it can be to get those and you don't want to waste them. How to have a relaxing yet exciting time when traveling. And at the end, a few pro tips that I love to use myself on how to avoid a hard bounce back after your trip. With that, you can get back to your usual routines as smoothly as possible. There are two ways you can manage your travel. Either you will delegate all the planning and buy a guided trip, or you will do all of that yourself. The first one is expensive and doesn't allow you to do what you actually want to. And you just follow blindly the guides and rush from one tourist object to another. The second one can really elevate your travel to a whole different level. It will allow you to experience and learn a new culture or enjoy a new place, but it requires time and effort. However, with this simple plan, you can do it quickly and efficiently. Just reuse this template whenever you're planning your next travel. Step 1. Choose your must-sees. There's probably a reason why you chose this destination, so list down those reasons first. If the reason is something like the tickets were cheap or my friends live there, skip this step and move directly to the next one. Step 2. This step is often something that seems to be overwhelming, but if you do it this way, it will take you just an hour or two. Choose your nice to sees, and that's when the more complex work starts. My recommendation is to use ready itineraries. If you start googling the destination you would like to see, there will be billions of pages and every one of them will suggest a different place. Ready itineraries like YouTube videos. Ever since I don't have the time to spend months on travel planning, this is the best way to learn what to see. Watch 2-3 videos titled "What to do in Destination X for Y days." Write down things you like and mark them on a map. Google Maps is my choice as it's the one I use all the time, also for other purposes. You can also go for travel blogs. There is usually the same info as in the YouTube videos, but requires reading. I know this is about low effort planning, but maybe it won't be that bad. And mark what you like. You should end up with map of must-sees and nice-to-sees. Perfect. Let's move on then. To step 3. It's time to put it into the correct order. And connecting the dots on your map is definitely not enough. Two things to consider first. Do you have any places marked that require reservations or are planned or booked for a specific day? That's important. Note that down, or if you don't know yet, check when you can visit those places. Now, if it's a museum for which you can just buy a ticket when you're there, don't bother. But if it's an event like a sports game or concert, or it's a museum for which you book the ticket for a very specific time, do that. The second thing to consider is your arrival and departure, airport and time. So this is how it should look now. Now it's connecting the dots. And I won't give a prescription for that, as how you approach that depends on many things. For example, how are you traveling? With a car, with a train, with buses? How much time do you have? What pace do you like? Are you okay with sleeping in different cities every single night? I will only give you some advice. Don't spend too much time on that. What you should plan before you leave is where you spend the first night, or if you want to stay a couple of days in the first place, how many nights are there? Plan what you want to do in the first 1 to 3 days. Everything else you can plan on the go. Of course, if you have some must-see places, maybe it's worth it to plan it in more detail. But instead of trying to describe how to do that, let me give you an example of a recent trip to Sicily in Italy. First, the must-sees: Etna volcano, Taormina and Syracuse. Then I defined the nice-to-sees: Agrigento, Noto, Ragusa, Modica, some beach time and some nice restaurants. So basically these were the things I really wanted to see but were not something I had to see. The timing. Arrival was Catania at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. Departure was also from Catania on a Sunday, the week after at 8 a.m. What I booked was 4 days in Catania, as I knew I prefer staying in the city after I land in the evening, especially as I'm traveling with a toddler, and from Catania I could easily do day trips to all must-sees. I also booked a rental car for all 10 days of stay. The rest of the itinerary looked as follows. Day 0, arrival Catania. Sleeping in Catania. Day 1, Catania and the nearby beaches. Day 2, Etna volcano and Savoca, sleeping in Catania. Day 3, Taormina and the Isola Bella beach and sleeping in Catania. Day 4 was Fontane Bianchi beach and Syracuse. And then I moved to Noto for the accommodation. Day 5 was Noto and sleepover again in Noto. Day 6 Modica and Ragusa, sleeping in Noto. Day 7 Fontane Bianchi beach and Agrigento, sleeping in Agrigento. Day 8 was again Agrigento and sleeping again in Agrigento. The next day was the Valley of Temples and getting back to Catania and sleeping there, and from there in the morning the departure. This simple plan allowed me to spend probably 2 evenings and was super easy to do with those steps. Since I have a family, I value my free time much more, so this is something you can implement yourself and easily come up with itineraries. Forget about headaches and feeling overwhelmed by the idea of planning your travel. We have spent there 10 days as I had 2 full weeks off. Lucky me, but it would be much more challenging if I didn't have that much time. What do I do in such cases? How can you get the most out of the days you have off? Here are a few simple pieces of advice to apply. With those you can really feel that you are on holiday. First, the travel time to travel days ratio. If you have just a week, you probably shouldn't travel to the other side of the world. You also shouldn't spend a whole day on a plane in each direction. The shorter the travel, the quicker you should be able to get to your destination. That's why it's so important when selecting flight tickets. Opt for those living close to your hometown. It's oftentimes overlooked and the travel might take only a few hours, but if it takes another 5 to get to the airport, a whole day is gone already. If you can, just search for direct connections or search for destinations to which you have a direct connection. Flights with stopovers usually mean several more hours of travel, and that can make a huge difference. Number 2, it's also important when you plan to go. If you want to use fewer days off, try leaving in the afternoon. In that case, you could work that day and leave afterwards, and still you would have a full day the day after. And if you have just a couple of days off left, but you're dreaming of longer holidays, look into the calendar and try to plan your travel close to bank holidays and weekends. I have traveled a few times already during New Year's Eve, when the 1st of Jan is a bank holiday, but the 6th of Jan as well, at least here in Poland. So with just a few days off, I could travel for 2 weeks. But be careful when planning your travel during bank holidays. If you have those in your place, you're golden. If there are also bank holidays at your destination, expect crowds and higher prices. So make sure or just consider that if you plan your trip during bank holidays, that can apply to your destination as well. Now, have you ever felt like when you got back from a trip you felt even more tired than you were before you left? Or that you're rushing everywhere and would like to just chill on the beach? And when chilling on the beach you would like to have some more action as you're dying of boredom. Here are some tips on how to balance relaxing and exciting activities at the same time. So the first and probably most important tip is to convince yourself that you won't see everything. Just get over it. Don't plan to see every attraction in the country you're visiting. Sure, if you're going to the Vatican, chances are that you can see everything possible. Of course, the places you can actually enter there. Other than that, focus on staying in 1 or 2 areas. Let me give you an example. I went to Peru a couple of years ago. It's quite a large country, and if you mark all the most important places, it looks like this. But we've decided that we will only see what's most important for us, and we stayed 1 week in the Cusco region and another week in the mountains near Huaraz. Number 2, plan various activities. Of course, everyone should do what they like best, but from my experience, mixing various activities makes you feel more excited about them. One thing that many people do that is not particularly good is that they follow blindly some guidebooks or lists of top attractions. They might end up going from one city to another one after another, all similar. Church, square, monument, church, square, monument. If you're not a small town lover, this can be exhausting. Do plan some time to do some sports if that's what you like. Check out some natural landscapes, go to a beach, find some nice restaurants, find various things to do, some active and chilling ones among them. 3. Try to not plan every single hour of your travel. It might not only save you a lot of time when planning your trip. Also, when you're already at your destination, you will have much more freedom to do whatever you want at the moment. You could just plan a few days ahead when you're already traveling. Having less constraints is more freedom and less stress. When I used to plan out the whole trip, I was ending up being stressed and many places had to be visited only because they were on the list. When I learned to adapt, it happened to me many times that I changed my plans. Alright, before we get to the last chapter, which is how to avoid a hard bounce back after your travel, which will be really exciting, I hope, and insightful, I hope, let me remind you that you can subscribe to the channel if the video brings you value. Also, I'll make a whole series on traveling for busy people, deep diving into each of the chapters. Please leave also a comment. What other advice do you have for those struggling with finding time to travel? Maybe we can all learn something. Okay, the last one. How to avoid a hard bounce back after your travel so you can get back to your usual routines as smoothly as possible. First of all, and this might sound weird, in the previous chapters we were fighting with all the power to gather as many days off as possible. But still, my advice is to get back home with another day off before going back to work. If it won't work or you really want to squeeze out as much time as possible, sure, go for it. But when you're getting back, especially after a long flight, going to bed and you have to go to work the day after, it just feels terrible. Save some time for the jet lag if that's needed, do some laundry and unpack your stuff. Check out if you didn't get fired, maybe you won't have to go to work at all. That's all jokes. Hope you will keep your job until the very end. But the buffer day is a lifesaver in my opinion. The other thing is that we consider the days off too literal and we switch off everything we were doing on a regular basis. I think it's wrong. If you are working hard to, I don't know, stay in shape all year round and you really enjoy it, why not to keep those good habits also when abroad? Sure, it doesn't mean you have to work out every day. You can surely take some time to relax a bit more. It won't hurt. But it happened to me that I was gaining 2 kilos during a trip because if I'm away, I can lose the brakes. But then I was getting back and I was feeling guilty and bad about it, and the 2 kilos didn't stay with me for a couple of days. So as long as the trip was, but much longer. My advice is to maybe relax a bit, but keep the good habits. Eat good food and move around. It won't just make you feel better while traveling, but your brain will thank you, so it will thank itself when you're back and won't have pangs of guilt. In general, I believe it's really important to do what actually brings you joy while traveling. It seems like many travelers just go with the trends and chase Instagram pictures of their friends, not really thinking what is important for them. That's why I wanted to share with you how can you approach traveling differently so it's actually the best time you have spent. Go check that video, it's a really important one for me, hope you like it. Cheers, safe travels and do zobaczenia!